is Nadine with DIY Sweets. Today I'm going to show you just how easy making a French silk pie is. Really delicious. People will rant and rave about how good it is, and you're going to find out today just how easy it is to do. We're going to start out by making a graham cracker crust. Now I'm actually making two pies that are French silk pies because this is going to feed a lot of people. So I'm going to double the pie crust recipe, and that means I'm going to mix it all in a bowl before I put it in the pie plate. If I were just doing one French silk pie, I would just mix it all up in the pie plate. But because I'm doing two, I'm going to mix it in a bowl first. Now I'm starting, because this is French silk and it's chocolate, I want the pie crust not to be a regular graham cracker pie crust. I want it to be a chocolate pie crust. So I just stick the chocolate graham crackers in my food processor, stick this here, and I'm going to just grind this up until it is very fine. Look and see, there's still a couple, I can see still a couple of big chunks in there, so I'm just going to mix them up. I'm going to measure this out and put it in the bowl. Because I'm doing a double recipe, I'm going to probably need 2 packages and maybe a couple more. But usually most pie crusts take about 1 package of the cracker crumbs. Sometimes it can take 1 or 2 crackers from another package, but it's usually around a package. I like to measure things. I guess you could say I'm very scientific in my cooking, and that I like to make sure it's the exact amount. Then your recipes are more likely to turn out every time, because while cooking is an art, it also is very much a science. And with this, if you don't have enough crumbs to the butter, it's going to be too dry or it's going to be too wet. So I do like measuring out to make sure I have the right amount. So I will come back with you as soon as I have ground up the other package and I've measured out all the graham cracker crumb or the chocolate graham cracker crumbs, and show you how I finish up the pie shell. Now that I have all of the graham cracker crusts in here, I'm going to add the sugar. And then I'm just going to mix it up so the sugar is totally blended in before I add the butter. Now, as I said, if I were just doing one pie, I would be doing this in the pie crust. But since I am doing two, I am doing it in a separate bowl. Okay, so now I am ready to just pour that butter in. And this is now going to have parts that are really, really wet and parts that are really dry. So I want to keep mixing it in, the butter, until all of it is a little bit moist. So all those really big globs where the butter landed when I poured it in, you're going to slowly absorb the dry stuff until it's all an even consistency. As you can see, there's not really any dry spots. It's all just slightly moist. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in my pie tins, and then I'm going to spread it around. And some people like to use a spoon to kind of get it around the sides. Some people like using their hands. I usually just use my hands, but you can choose which way you find is easier and which way you're more comfortable doing. So I'm kind of looking, and I can use a little bit more. Okay, now this is just a rough estimate. You notice I didn't measure exact, and that's fine. Because if I find that one has a lot more than the other, I can, as I'm pressing it in, I can slowly move it back and forth. Now this looks like, you're looking at this and you're going, how are you ever going to fit filling in there? That is like full. But as you start pressing it down and press it up to the sides, and I like to actually work with getting it up the sides first. And then after I get it all up the sides and just kind of hanging a little bit over the top there, then I work with what's left to fill in the bottom. So I may have some holes there as I'm working on the sides, and that's fine because I'm going to go back and work with that. But right now I'm trying to get all of it up the sides, and I want the sides to be flat against there. So I am actually pressing pretty hard. So now you'll notice I've got it pressed down the sides. And now I'm just going to make sure that the bottom is also firm. And I am pressing down fairly hard because I want this really compacted. Now you don't have to worry too much about it sticking when you dish it out because there is quite a bit of butter in there. One thing people will sometimes do, which makes it a little bit easier to get out as you're serving the pie, is they'll put just like 1/4 of an inch of hot water in the sink, and they'll just dip their pie tins in that hot water, and it'll help soften the butter so that you can quickly scoop it up without leaving too much on the bottom. So as you can see, it's pretty much as easy as that. Just going around making sure I don't have any more fat spots, and it's all compressed really good. And then some people like to cook their pie crust for about 10 minutes in the oven on 350, and that's fine. You can do that. This recipe actually doesn't call for that to be done, but I still want to make sure it's not crumbly. So what I do is I just stick it in the fridge, and when I stick it in the fridge, that butter is going to harden up, and then when I'm pouring the filling in, it's not going to, the crust will be firm and you won't have little floaties in your filling. So I'm going to just stick this right in the fridge and let it firm up, and then I will do this one. And then once I have them both ready, I will come back and show you how to make the French silk filling. We're going to make the filling for the French silk pie now. So we're going to start by putting the eggs into the pan. Now I'm making 2 pies. So to make the 2 pies, I need to make a double batch. And because my pie tins are a little bit bigger than most pie tins, I'm actually making a triple batch so that I will have enough to fill both pie tins. So I'm going to start by cracking the eggs and putting them into the pan. Once I have all the eggs into the pan, I'm just going to quickly beat them up. I don't have any heat on the eggs yet. I'm just beating them up. When I'm stirring and doing the cooking, I will have heat on and I'll be using a spoon. But for just mixing the eggs up, I'm using a whisk. And then I'm going to take the sugar and I'm going to dump it in there. And then I'm going to stir it. I still don't have any heat on. I want to get this all mixed up before I turn the heat on. And I'm not stirring it vigorously. I'm just stirring it to mix it in. And once all the sugar and eggs are mixed together, then I'll stick the heat on. And when I turn the heat on, I'm going to want to heat this to 160 degrees. It's going to take a little while to get there. In fact, while this is heating to 160 degrees, I will be putting the chocolate into the microwave and melting it so it will be ready to go in here once this is done. I've just about got that all mixed in. I still feel some pretty big chunks that are just sugar. So I'm going to turn the heat on to, I usually do it wants it to be on a low heat So I'm going to have it just a little bit above medium, a little bit below medium, so that it's on low. And then I need to cook this to 160 degrees. And you're supposed to pretty much be stirring this constantly. Now you can take like a break long enough to get this up in the microwave and get it going and to stir it. But overall, you want to stir it pretty constantly to make sure that the eggs don't start cooking and becoming scrambled eggs, but they stay mixed with the sugar. Also, because this has to go to 160 degrees, I want to stick this thermometer in there, and it's going to let me know when this has gotten to 160 degrees. Now I'm also going to put the chocolate here in the microwave. And chocolate, you don't want to cook on a high heat. You want to cook it, melt it slowly. And my microwave actually has a setting for chocolate, and so I'm able to just use that setting for chocolate. But even with using that setting for chocolate, I still want to check it about every minute and stir it and see if it's melting. Because chocolate, it'll look like it's not melted if you just look in the microwave while it's going. But then once you start stirring it, you'll see that it actually has melted more than it looked like it was melted. It's probably going to take 3 or 4 minutes to melt it on my chocolate setting, but I still want to stir it about every minute to make sure that it is melting correctly. And when I'm not checking the chocolate, I am stirring this egg mixture. We're wanting it to get up to 160. I will be back to show you the chocolate as it's melting, show you what it looks like when you take it out and stir it. This has been going for about 2 minutes now, so I'm going to take it out, and I'm just going to stir it. You can see it's still very solid, but I do want to stir it and check and make sure that it hasn't melted too much. That I'm going to let go ahead probably for another minute, because that's not very melted at all. So I'll stick that back in for another minute, and then I'll check it again. And that's about as long as you want to leave this alone, not stirring it, is the length of time it took me to check that. So I'll be back with you when that's cooked for a minute, and we'll check and see how well it has melted. This is now melted for about another minute. So I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to stir it. So here's the chocolate, and you see as I'm stirring it this time that it is melted quite a bit. It's not quite to the liquid form yet. It's not all the way melted, but it's getting close. So when it gets to this point, I actually want to check it about every 30 seconds, because it doesn't take long once it gets to this point to get melted the rest of the way. So I'm going to stick it back in for another 30 seconds. And then I will check it again. This is now gone for another 30 seconds. So I'm going to pull it out. And as you notice, this has really melted down. I can feel a couple of lumps. You can't really see the lumps, but I can feel there's still a couple of lumps. But as I'm stirring it, those lumps are melting. And this is pretty much, I'm going to do it another 15 seconds because I can feel there's still a couple lumps. But besides those couple lumps, it is ready. So now I'm going to do it not even 30 seconds, but like 15 seconds. And as you can see, this is still cooking quite nicely. We need it to get to 160, and it's already up to 100. So we're still stirring this when we're not working with the chocolate. Okay, that's been that 15 seconds. So now I want to pull this out. And the chocolate is probably now going to be done. And we're just going to let it sit until we get the egg mixture done. Yes, that is all smooth. There are no more lumps. So we're just going to let this sit until we get the egg mixture done. And then I'm going to keep cooking this egg and sugar mixture until we get this up to 160 degrees. And then I will come back and I will show you what we're going to do after that. This is at 155. It's almost 160, so it's all but there. Just going to cook it a teeny bit longer till it reaches 160. When it reaches 160, I'm going to turn the heat off and remove it from the heat, and then we're going to add the vanilla and the chocolate to it. At that point, it's going to need to come down, not quite to room temperature, but to 90 degrees. While this is coming down to 90 degrees, I will show you how to do the butter and the whipped cream so that it's ready to be mixed with this once it gets cool enough. Our thermometer now reads 160, so I'm going to turn the heat off and I'm going to slide this off of the heat. Now I'm going to just dump the vanilla in. And then this is the chocolate that we melted. I want to make sure that gets in there too. I'm going to get this all in the pan. And then we're going to stir it up. Use this spoon to try to, because this spoon is kind of like a scraper. So it's going to help get that last little bit of chocolate out. Because that chocolate is so good. We want it as chocolatey as possible. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir this till it's well blended. So I want it all to look the same. I don't want to see streaks of the yellow egg, and I don't want to see big chunks of the chocolate color. I want it all to be the same color. And that's how I'll know it is well blended. And then this has got to sit until it gets to 90 degrees. And of course I want to make sure it's not on the heat so that it can cool down faster. And it'll take a few minutes for it to cool down, but as I said, we'll be mixing up, we'll be creaming the butter, and then we'll be whipping up the whipped cream while we're waiting for this to cool. So as you can see, that's pretty well blended. So now I'll just let this sit for a few minutes, and I'll come back and I'll stir it every few minutes. And then we'll be ready to put it all together. So let's show you how to do the butter and the whipped cream. We're going to cream the butter in this bowl. So I just want to put the butter in. Now remember, I'm doing a double batch. So I've got more butter than you will probably have. And this butter has come to room temperature. So it's not going to take very long for me to cream it. So as you can see, that is already creamed. That is all it took. Now I want to whip up the whipped cream. For the whipped cream, all we're going to do is we're going to beat it with the whisk because we want to get it nice and light and fluffy. And once it starts thickening, well, we actually want it to form peaks, some peaks. So once this starts thickening, we will add the confectioner's sugar. But until it starts thickening, we want to just have the whipping cream in there. So I'm just going to turn this on to the stir. I don't want it any faster than that because I don't want this splashing up. And then from that stir, I'm going to just slowly speed it up as I see how fast I can go without it splashing out. Eventually I want to get it to the highest speed because that's what's going to make it whip up. But I don't want to just go right there or I would have milk all over the kitchen area. Slowly speeding it up. And as it starts thickening and becoming like whipped cream normally looks, it's going to add volume. So right now we probably have it on medium-high. Probably about as thick as fast as I want it right now while it's this liquidy. Because as you notice, it's starting to splatter on the sides, but it's not splattering out of the pan. Well, it is a little bit. So I'm going to turn it back down until it thickens up a little bit. And once this starts thickening, I will then be ready to add the confectioner's sugar, but this needs to thicken a little bit before I do that. You'll see that it is now increasing in volume. It's still pretty runny, so I haven't added the confectioner's sugar yet. But it is increasing in volume. When we look at this, you can see it's starting to thicken up. It still is not as thick as we want it, but it's not total liquid. So I am going to go ahead and add the confectioner's sugar now. And then I'm just going to turn it back on. Again, I don't want to go too fast. I want to slowly increase my speed. And this time, we are going to keep beating it until it forms peaks. And as that's beating, every so often I come over to my chocolate that's cooling and I stir it. You're starting to see that that is starting to get thick. Let me turn this off and let's look and see what it's, as you can see, that's just forming soft peaks. If I were to take this off and dip that in, it's almost there. I want a little bit firmer peaks than that. I'm just going to give it like another half minute or minute. Now I don't want to overmix it because I don't want to turn this into butter, but I do want it to have firm peaks. That is starting to look like it is just firming right up. Notice now, when I dip this in there and pull it out, it has those peaks. So this is ready. As soon as we get our chocolate mixture to 90 degrees, we will be ready to put it all together to make our pies. Right now this says it's about 125, 130. Still has a little bit to go. I will come back and show you how we put it all together once this reaches 90 degrees. This is now down to 90 degrees. I'm going to take this and I'm going to pour it right into the butter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to beat this on a high speed for 5 minutes. So first I'm going to start slow. So I want to blend it in. And now I'm just going to beat this for 5 minutes. And I will slowly increase the speed as I see it can handle it without splashing out. I don't know that I want to go any faster than that, even though my mixer can go faster. If this were a hand mixer, this is about as fast as that would be. There's a little bit faster, paddle because I didn't see that it was getting as light and creamy as I wanted it to get. With the whisk paddle, I'm now going to continue to beat this on a high speed. It had already gone for a few minutes, so I'm going to give it about another 3 minutes. Because I really want to get this light and airy, which wasn't happening with the other paddle. This has now been mixing for about 5 minutes, so I'm going to turn this mixer off. And the next step is to fold the whipped cream into our chocolate mix. Now remember, we were mixing that whipped cream up before. Now I'm looking at this bowl and I'm looking at this bowl. And I'm not sure I can fit the whipped cream in there and get it to mix. So I'm actually going to dump my chocolate mixture into the whipped cream bowl. Because either way, what we're going to do is fold the whipped cream and the chocolate together. So when I'm folding, what I'm doing is I'm coming from the top to the bottom and I'm just folding it in. It's not a very vigorous fold. It's just a gentle bottom to top, bottom to top. And I just keep doing it until it's all the same color. That's how I'll know I have all the whipped cream in there. As long as I see streaks of white and streaks of brown, then I know I need to keep folding this so that I can get it all mixed. And it can take a few minutes to do that. You see it's starting to look very chocolatey, but we do still have some white streaks. So that means we still need to keep folding it. Now when you're doing a single pie, it's not going to be so full in the bowl, and it's going to be easier to bring it up from the bottom. This one, it's a little bit more difficult because I have to get, so there's not that much handle left to get all the way down to the bottom of the bowl. But I'm still going to keep working at it and get it there. And as you can see, now it's all starting to look pretty close to the same color. I want to make sure, get all the way down to the bottom, bring it up, make sure there's no, so you can see there's a little bit of dark chocolate there. So I want to make sure that gets brought up and folded in. So it's all one color and all blended together. So you can see that looks pretty blended. Gonna scrape down the sides. And as I scrape down the sides, I'm now gonna do again, scrape that bottom, bring it up. See, I'm not really finding chocolate coming up when I scrape the bottom now. So this is basically ready. So our next step is we're going to just pour this into the pie. Here's our 2 pie shells that we made earlier. All I'm going to do is just dump this in until it's full. And it can be a little bit full like that, and that's okay because this is going to set up solid. I'm going to do the same with the other one. I want these very full because, as I said, this is going to set up and be solid. You do want to try, if you get a little bit too full like I did that one, just scrape off the extra so it doesn't get all over your fridge. And then you're going to let this set up in the fridge for at least 6 hours. Here is our French silk pie, all ready for you to eat. This is Nadine with DIY Sweets. Enjoy!